The Texas evening draped the world in hues of molten gold and burnished amber as my 20-acre ranch buzzed with the lively chatter of a long-awaited celebration. Friends, family, and neighbors converged for a backyard BBQ unlike any other, a jubilant reunion to honor my son's homecoming from the Marines. The air was rich with the aromatic dance of mesquite smoke and sizzling meat, and every laugh and clink of a cold drink felt like a small defiance against the everyday grind. Tonight, under the expansive Texas sky, our private piece of paradise was a shimmering mosaic of love, liberty, and the unbridled joy of gathering together. I stood at the helm of the grill, tongs in hand and eyes alight with the satisfaction of searing perfect burgers over the pulsing heat. Every flip of the patty, every burst of flame and curl of smoke was in step with the beat of our celebration, a rhythmic homage to long summer nights. The gentle murmur of conversations, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter, blended seamlessly with the chirr of crickets and the soft rustle of the wind weaving between the mesquite trees. It was a scene drawn straight from the pages of a simple yet unforgettable Americana. Just when the revelry was reaching its zenith and the party felt as endless as the horizon, an abrupt voice shattered the harmony like a discordant note in a familiar song. "Put down the tongs and step away from the grill, sir!" The command, echoing with an authority that could not be ignored, cut through the ambient buzz. I paused mid-flip, burger suspended in time, a moment of incredulity that rippled out among the assembled guests. In that heartbeat, the festive glow was pierced by the shock of reality. Before my very eyes, as if summoned by the force of that single command, 6 patrol cars materialized at the edges of my property. Their red and blue lights danced staccato patterns against the darkening heavens, transforming the backyard into a surreal stage of flashing signals and harsh commands. Overhead, helicopters circled in taut mechanical orbits, their low, periodic hum lending the tableau an air of grim inevitability. The cheerful embers of the celebration were dimming beneath the oppressive glare of authority. Kids, mid-bite and caught in the thrill of the moment just moments ago, now stared wide-eyed, their small hands frozen as they clutched half-eaten treats. Adults exchanged rapid, disbelieving glances, their earlier smiles giving way to expressions of muted alarm. In the thickening tension, the rising smoke from the grill seemed to twist into spectral shapes, a signal fire that beckoned the storm of consequences. Amid this charged silence, the law made itself unmistakably present. The commanding voice continued, its tone as crisp and steely as the gleam of a badge. "You are in violation of HOA Code 47-3B and O. Open flames or public gatherings on non-approved lots." With that, the surreal drama took on a definitive shape, one where the boundaries between private joy and civic control were about to be violently redrawn. And then, emerging from the charged atmosphere like a character from a different world, she appeared. Karen, the self-proclaimed arbiter of all that was proper in our little community. Dressed in a garish, bright pink suit that glowed unnaturally against the deepening sky, she stood behind the police line. In one hand, she gripped a walkie-talkie as if it were a scepter of authority, while the other clutched a camera, poised to document every infraction, every moment of this unfolding spectacle. Her very presence was a challenge, a vibrant, almost theatrical symbol of rule-bound order meeting spontaneous rebellion. "Ma'am," I managed to stammer, the words slipping out as I clutched both the burger and my dignity. "This is my property, my home. I'm celebrating my son's return, not staging a public disturbance." The words, as sincere as they were desperate, hung in the electrified air. Around us, the celebration now hesitated on the precipice between boisterous fun and an inescapable confrontation with authority. The assembled crowd, once united in mirth and food, now shared a collective astonishment that fused anger, confusion, and, in some hearts, a fierce pride. For a moment, the sky above, once a fading canvas of sunset brilliance, seemed to mirror the gravity of our predicament. Each gleaming patrol car, each rotor blade on the circling helicopters, drove home the realization that our quiet, cherished freedom was at risk of being smothered by the rigid dictates of the HOA and the law. A father nearby, eyes wide with parental instinct and fear, pulled his daughter close. An elderly man, weathered by years and wisdom, shook his head solemnly before murmuring to a friend, "We've seen too many freedoms strangled by needless rules." In that suspended second, I felt the weight of the world bear down on my shoulders. Here I was, a simple man tending a grill on his land, caught in the web of outdated codes and overzealous enforcers. Every ounce of my being, every flame of rebellious spirit, told me that this was not merely about a violation. It was about our inherent right to celebrate life as we see fit. The officer who had issued the command now advanced, his hand still resting casually on his holster. His eyes, firm yet betraying an undercurrent of sympathy, met mine briefly. "Sir, please comply," he repeated, voice measured and unyielding. Each syllable was imbued with the weight of bureaucracy, a cold reminder that even our most cherished moments could be disassembled by a single, unrelenting code. As the silence deepened and the collective pulse of the party throbbed with tension, Karen's eyes flashed with a mix of triumph and duty. "Arrest him!" she bellowed suddenly, and the words rang out like a sentence pronounced by a stern judge. A shudder of disbelief swept over the crowd. In that moment, time slowed to the pace of a heartbeat, and the festive spirit of the evening cracked under the strain of authoritarian decree. I stood there, tongs still clutched in one hand, feeling every eye fixed on me, a man caught between the freedom of private celebration and the gravity of imposed conformity. The crowd's initial shock gave way to a simmering murmur of protests, of silent nods exchanged between those who understood something fundamental was at stake. Karen's summons had not only disrupted a beloved gathering, but had ignited an undercurrent of defiance, a spark that threatened to upend the old order. "You have no right," I declared with a dignity that masked the swirling chaos inside me. "This is my land, and tonight we celebrate life and family. We celebrate honor, freedom, and the bonds that stitch us together even against the odds." My voice, though steady, carried the tremor of a man who was not just defending a party, but defending the very idea of living without fear of intrusive rules. An unexpected murmur of agreement arose from the crowd, a solitary, resonant voice echoing that sentiment. "He's right," someone said, the words small yet powerful as they spread from person to person like a whispered revolution. The atmosphere shifted subtly. What had begun as an enforcement of the rules was morphing into a collective statement, a rallying cry for the inherent right to celebrate without interference. The officer's stance wavered for a heartbeat. His eyes revealed a flicker of something, uncertainty, perhaps remorse, amid the strict lines of duty. For a moment, it appeared as though he too was questioning the harshness of the command that had set this confrontation in motion. The standoff, thick with tension and unspoken defiance, became as much a reflection of our shared humanity as of the oppressive structures that threatened to smother it. From the far corner of the gathering, an older gentleman, his face etched with decades of struggle and hard-won wisdom, stepped forward slowly. "Listen up," he said, his voice reverberating over the curious silence. "We gather here not just to eat and laugh, but to reclaim our right to be as we are. No code, no rule can take that from us." His words were not shouted, but carried the quiet authority of truth, a truth that resonated deep within every heart standing there. In that moment, the ranch transformed into more than just a patch of Texas land. It became a battleground where the sanctity of life and shared joy was pitted against an inflexible system of control. The sizzling sound of the grill seemed to underscore a relentless heartbeat, a reminder that life, in all its imperfection, was meant to be savored, rather than shackled. I took a deep breath, feeling the smoky heat mingle with the cool anxiety that had gripped us all. Lowering the tongs slowly, I embraced the gravity of the moment and addressed Karen once more, my tone equal parts defiance and compassion. "Ma'am, look around you. Before this very instant, we were all celebrating a moment of pure joy. This land, this party, it belongs to us. It belongs to every person who dares to live and love freely. You say rules are for protection, but how can you protect something that is so precious if you suffocate it with fear?" For a long, heavy moment, Karen's steely facade wavered. Her eyes, so determined just minutes before, softened as if they, too, were trying to remember the warmth of shared humanity. Around her, the air shimmered with tension and possibility. The officer's hand retreated slightly from his holster, and even the flashing lights seemed to dim in silent empathy with the plea hanging in the air. A hushed conversation broke out in the crowd, a murmuring chorus of voices that joined together as one. "This is our home," declared one neighbor, his tone firm despite the uncertainty. "We have a right to gather, to laugh, and to honor the moments that matter." In that reverberating exchange, every guest, from the smallest toddler peeking from behind a parent's leg to the elders who had seen many a sunrise, joined the silent rebellion. We were united not by anger, but by an overwhelming desire to preserve and protect our shared freedom. The officer cleared his throat, almost as if roused from a daze, and moved forward slowly. "Sir, you must comply with the ordinance," he stated once again. But his voice now carried an undercurrent of hesitation, a nuance that hinted at the realization that sometimes the letter of the law can be at odds with the spirit of the moment. It was a small concession, yet in that singular pause, the balance shifted just enough to allow hope to shimmer on the horizon. The heavy silence was punctuated by the soulful cry of a guitar from somewhere near the sound system, a stray note that seemed to capture the impossible mixture of sorrow and defiance in one simple tone. It was as if the universe itself conspired to underscore the irony. A night meant for celebration was being shadowed by an insistence on conformity, and yet, even in that enforced stillness, the heart of freedom beat strong. I continued, feeling every word reverberate not just in the space between us, but in every soul present. "This isn't about breaking any law, ma'am. It's about celebrating what it means to be human, to come together despite our differences, to mark milestones with the pure, unadulterated joy that can only come from shared experiences. We might be on private property, but tonight, the spirit of this place belongs to everyone who dares to dream of a world where laughter overcomes fear." A faint smile tugged at the edge of the officer's lips as he surveyed the crowd, and even Karen's determined grip on her walkie-talkie softened ever so slightly. It was as if the raw power of these simple truths was too profound to be ignored, challenging the rigidity of the lines that had so recently divided us. One by one, voices in the crowd murmured their approval, the collective resolve whispering that no bureaucratic decree could ever dampen the embers of genuine celebration. For what felt like both a lifetime and merely a fleeting second, the standoff evolved into a shared moment of reckoning. The ranch, bathed in the crimson glow of flashing lights and the last vestiges of daylight, became an altar, a place where every human longing for freedom had come to pay homage. Emotions mingled in the cool night air, anger tempered by hope, frustration softened by a yearning for unity, and above all, an unyielding affirmation that no regulation was worth the sacrifice of what made us alive. In the rising quiet, a murmur swept across the assembled crowd, a murmur of daring connectivity, as if each person secretly vowed never again to allow a rule or a code to dictate the joy of a moment. A voice, neither loud nor shrill, but filled with heartfelt resonance, stepped forward from the throng. "We must remember, this person said, almost to themselves, that every celebration, the flip of a burger, the sharing of a drink, the unguarded laughter, is a small act of defiance in a world that too often insists on order over life. Those words, simple and profound, rippled outward, igniting hope that the night's dark tensions could eventually give way to the liberating power of community. With each passing minute, the intensity of the encounter faded into a mellow yet powerful remembrance of who we were, a community that had taken a stand not for chaos, but for the right to simply be. The patrol cars, their lights still dancing in the dark, slowly receded into the distance, and the circling helicopters ascended, their haunting hum merging with the gentle rustling of the desert evening. In their wake, the harsh lines of imposed order blurred into the soft silhouettes of a gathering that had reclaimed its space, its voice, its hope. I finally lowered the tongs completely, setting them aside as if laying down a challenge for those who would seek to confine our spirits. "Tonight," I said, my voice now echoing with the certainty of a man who had glimpsed the fragility of freedom and had chosen to defend it. I add, "Tonight is not merely a celebration of a homecoming. It is the moment we affirm our right to live, to love, to defy the boundaries that seek to contain us." In that solemn declaration, every eye grew brighter, every heart braver, and the lessons of the evening etched themselves into the collective memory of our little corner of Texas. As the tension ebbed, the murmurs of solidarity swelled into determined conversation. Neighbors approached one another again, forming clusters where the warmth of shared experience filled the gaps once created by confusion and fear. The remnants of the culinary feast, the charred edges of burgers, the lingering aroma of smoked ribs, took on an almost sacred significance, as if each flavor was a pledge to never allow the intrusion of cold order into the sanctity of spontaneous joy. Conversations turned from whispered criticism of the night's unfolding to animated recollections of previous summers, when lives were measured not by regulations, but by the heartbeats shared under open skies. In a quiet moment that followed the confrontation, I found myself on the back porch, gazing into the deep velvet of the Texan night. I could see the scattered silhouettes of my friends and neighbors, who now carried the look of survivors, not just of an encounter with authority, but of the struggle to preserve something inherently human. I saw in their eyes the unspoken promise that while the lines drawn by officials may come and go, the spirit that binds us together is eternal. It was a reminder that every gathering, every celebration, was a quiet protest against a world that too often threatened to erase the very things that make life worth living. Karen, too, lingered for a while by the pickup truck that had borne her into this fray. The bright fabric of her suit, now softened by the light of empathy and regret, betrayed a vulnerability beneath the armor of duty. In a whispered conversation with one of her aides, a moment that no official camera captured, I later learned that she herself had once known the liberating joy of an unregulated summer night. Her eyes, normally so controlled, shimmered with memories of smoother, kinder evenings, and for a brief, poignant moment, even her unwavering stance faltered under the weight of recollection. The incident that night rippled outward well beyond the boundaries of my ranch. In the days that followed, word spread like wildfire through our community, and even into the smaller towns dotting the Texas landscape. Neighbors, once reluctant to question the suffocating strictures of the HOA, began to challenge long-held assumptions in town hall meetings and over coffee in sunlit diners. The story of that extraordinary night, a night when a single BBQ party became a battleground for human dignity, became a modern folktale, retold with passion at family gatherings and local celebrations alike. It was no longer just about a violation of Code 47-3B and O. It had transformed into a symbol of defiant hope, a call to all the quiet souls yearning for a world where the vibrancy of human connection reigned supreme. In time, the pressure of the night's events prompted discussions far greater than any one incident. The local council, having witnessed the unity and raw emotion of our collective stance, could no longer ignore the outcry. Committees were formed, rules were debated, and for the first time in a long while, the spirit of our community was allowed to guide the restructuring of regulations meant to protect us. The voices that had gathered under those red and blue lights, each voice a note in a swelling symphony of defiance, began to shape policies that valued the human heart as much as they did cold statutes. Standing once again before a modest crowd at a reformed HOA meeting weeks later, I recalled that fateful evening with quiet pride and lingering sorrow. "When you come together to celebrate life," I said, my tone resonating with personal experience and collective wisdom, "you're not just acknowledging a milestone. You're standing up for the right to be free, to be proud, and to revel in each fleeting moment that gives us purpose. No law, however well intended, can strip us of that power if we stand united." The silence that followed was not heavy with regret, but alive with the promise of a future where the community's voice could never be silenced. As the meeting drew to a close and smiles of understanding passed between even the most weathered faces, I stepped out into the brisk Texan evening. The stars, now prickling the sky with their cold, unyielding light, bore witness to the extraordinary transformation that had taken place in our quiet town. The incident was no longer a moment of shame or regret. It had become a beacon of change, a vivid reminder that our lives were too precious to be curated by the dry mandates of bureaucracy. That night on my ranch, etched forever in the collective memory of those who had been there, became a turning point. It was a night when every flip of a burger, every shared laugh, every tear shed in defiance against the intrusion of rigid order coalesced into a single resounding affirmation that the human spirit is indomitable. With each subsequent gathering, the narrative grew richer, a living testament to the idea that true freedom is claimed not by the absence of rules, but by the courage to challenge them when they threaten to extinguish the fierce, wild flame of life. Now, every time I fire up my grill on a sultry, star-dappled Texas evening, I do so with the memory of that transformative night pulsing through my veins. I remember the officers' conflicted eyes, Karen's bleeding heart of duty and regret, and the unyielding strength of a community that refused to be boxed in by outdated conventions. I remember those moments of shared defiance as well as the tender reconciliations that followed, and I celebrate them all. For in that clash between silent tradition and the wild, anarchic beauty of living, we discovered a truth that no code could ever capture. Celebration itself is an act of rebellion. Tonight, as guitars play soft blues and the fire slowly dies down to glowing embers, I stand on my back porch with a full heart and a spirit unbowed by the authoritarian dictates of yesterday. I know that every law, every regulation can be questioned if it dares to erode the simple, undeniable truths of human connection. And in that realization lies the promise of tomorrow. A tomorrow in which every community, every individual, is given the space to celebrate life in all its messy, beautiful glory. It is my hope that our story, that night marked by firelight and flashing red-blue, will serve as a gentle reminder to all that in the interplay of shadow and light, of order and chaos, it is our collective heartbeat that truly writes the story of freedom. And as long as we stand together, smiling in the face of a system that sometimes forgets the value of joy, our fire will never be extinguished. As the embers die out and the last echoes of that unforgettable confrontation fade into the gentle hum of the rural night, a new day begins to dawn, not just for my ranch or our tight-knit community, but for anyone who dares to choose life over compliance. In every remembered moment of rebellion against the suffocating gavel of conformity, there is an enduring promise that our laughter, our celebrations, and our togetherness will continue to form a tapestry too brilliant for anyone to ever unravel. And so, with each grilling season that comes and goes, Let the story of that epic night serve as both a caution and a call to arms. For every time you gather with friends and family, whether over sizzling steaks, warm smiles, or shared memories, know that you are part of something larger than yourself. A legacy of resistance, of love, and of the timeless right to rejoice in the beauty of being alive. No matter how relentless the codes may be, our spirit will always shine brighter. Let this be the final word. That in every moment of outrage or unexpected confrontation, there lies an opportunity to reclaim the sanctity of human celebration. Our BBQ party on that fateful evening transcended mere food and fire. It ignited a conversation about freedom and the unpredictable, defiant beauty of the human soul. And may that conversation, spoken softly in the quiet moments after the chaos, resonate in the hearts of all who dare to live passionately, openly, and unapologetically.